Something has changed in the conversation around Osun after Adeleke's victory. And when Rufai Oseni started talking about what this election could mean for 2027, it didn't sound like someone who was trying to make everybody comfortable. He said what he believed needed to be said, and depending on where you stand politically, you may either agree with him completely or strongly disagree. But I want you to hear what he actually said before we get into the bigger question. And I want to ask you this question: can the opposition really use what happened in Osun to challenge Tinubu in 2027? And if you want political analysis that goes beyond the headlines, make sure you subscribe because this conversation is only getting started.
For Adeleke, what I wanted to comment on this, for Adeleke supporting Tinubu, there's no big deal about it. In fact, we have a local term for it in Nigerian colleges. It's called skirt and blouse. All right, skirt and blouse means you can vote for somebody down the ballot, maybe House of Rep, another party, or governorship, another party, presidential, another person. So it's called skirt and blouse. It's not a big deal. People do it. Even President Tinubu has done it for Goodluck Jonathan then. While they were pushing the AC and APC mantra, I think to about 2011, they supported Goodluck Jonathan in 2011 election, but Fashola obviously was supported for the governorship election. So it's not a new thing that they do. So if they have whatever political agreement, that's their business. But we should all remember that the people's power always reigns supreme. And that's it in the end. And if for anything, that has shown there. So if Adeleke thinks he can use his power and his, pizzazz to be able to sell President Tinubu and bind to President Tinubu, that's it. I mean, he can do anything he wants to do. It's a normal thing. I mean, it's not a big deal that people normally do it in this part of the world and all of that. But they should never forget the people's power.
Exactly.
And secondly, it's not about, because I see a lot of APC people are trying to now spin the narrative that they had an agreement. It's not true. It's not about the agreements they had that made Adeleke win the election. Tinubu used federal might. I deliberately mentioned his name. Yes, President Tinubu, there was a use of federal might, and by the APC, because his name was being mentioned. Let me even tell you where they started the federal might from. From local governments. When they didn't release the money of the local government. With President Tinubu claiming he wasn't aware of that. Then, the one that we called the attention to that they quickly reversed was the freezing of the account. Do you know now, investigations are not even showing that. I think they even froze more than one account. Some papers are reporting that they froze more than one account in the States. The heavy militarization, they did. They used every federal might possible. It's just that it didn't fall to them because the power of the people was stronger than anything. So this narrative they're not trying to push that is because of the anti program. No, in fact, let me now debunk the argument by saying, didn't Oyetola publicly say that because you are supporting Tinubu does not mean that will not beat you? I know, Oyetola said it publicly now.
Right.
So let's stop all of this because now they're trying to spin the narrative against the Tinubu because they haven't again. No, they use federal might against them. It didn't just work. The people might reign supreme.
Now, I think there's one thing we need to separate here. Adeleke supporting Tinubu is one conversation. What happened during the Osun election is another. Adeleke has every right to decide who he supports politically, and as Rufai explained, Nigerians have seen this kind of skirt and blouse politics before. So, the real question isn't simply, why is Adeleke supporting Tinubu? The bigger question is, what does Osun tell us about the strength of APC? And the possibility of defeating it, because this election has demonstrated something very important. APC can be beaten, not necessarily everywhere, not automatically in 2027, but Osun has shown that political dominance does not mean guaranteed victory, and that is the part the opposition should be studying.
Ayo, last week, when I was telling the people the challenges they will face, you thought I was scaring them? No. I believe in telling the people the truth so that they know how to react to dangers. Yes.
So a risk assessment.
I like to say it the way it is. Tell them the risk involved. And I think it worked for the Osun people because they knew the risk involved. Don't sugarcoat it for them. Just like I'm going to tell the Nigerian people the risk involved. If you think because Osun people stood up, it will be easy in 2027, you are foolish, you are delusional. 2027 is going to be different from Osun. The federal might that they used and they couldn't execute, they will use it times 10. Because people that use federal minds, they will go back to the drawing room and try to perfect it. That's why when people are saying, I saw some people saying President Tinubu is the hero of this. What President Tinubu? What President? I mean, people should stop that dirty narrative. They used federal might fully. It didn't work. That's what happened. That's when the game was up. If I want to open a new Pandora's box, INEC should tell us why the IRF stopped uploading for 3 hours. INEC should tell us. You see, these are the things they will never tell you. If you say INEC write a report now, they will start all sorts of mumbo jumbo. So when people say, what did INEC do well?
For some areas, wasn't it?
What did INEC do well?
Beavers worked about...
Beavers work, how many percentage failure?
They said, well, I'll pull up the report from Yaga.
About close to 20% failure.
Yes.
I think I got it right with logistics.
Wait, when they first used Beavers, what was the success rate? In the first...
No, Beavers was a failure, I believe, in the selection.
Yes, that's what we are saying.
No.
When they first used
Beavers...
Beavers...
It worked in certain parts.
Wait, when they first used Beavers, in the first by-election, I think it was Edu they first used Beavers, right? The election that brought Obaseki in. That was, I think, 2020...
No, 21?
Yeah. What was the success rate?
Beavers needs work.
So what did INEC... And that's why when we were telling them that... anyway, they've said that it's not because it's on Android 10. Something that's supposed to have close to 99% success or more than 90% success is recording about something percent success. And we say we should clap for INEC. Okay, maybe you can clap for them, but me, I'm not ready to share clap. I don't just give praise like that.
Sorry, let me just for clarify. This is Yaga's report. They say that in 80% of polling units, Beavers functioned properly. However, in 20% of polling units, the Beavers malfunctioned and it was fixed. Okay. So the widespread technological breakdowns feared following challenges observed during the mock accreditation the previous week. It didn't materialize to a scale to undermine the integrity of the process.
Can I just say something without eating into your time? I think technically that's correct, right? But if you watch the Beavers actually being used and how they literally have to go like this to try and get somebody's face before they... It takes more than 2 minutes to verify a single voter. Beavers needs work.
So it's not efficient.
It's not efficient.
When Mahmoud first did it in the first election, it was way more efficient than this. Second point, I've also given them a challenge. Okay. You know me, I will open Pandora's box. They should tell us why all of a sudden upload stopped for 3 hours. Because it was after upload stopped for 3 hours, then upload resumed. Then some people knew that the game was over and they started leaving town. Federal might was being used. There are many things that Adeleke himself saw that he can't see today because he just wants to let sleeping dogs lie. So for all of those that say this and all of... No. The big kudos should go to the people. But you see why I say it to be delusional is it possible now to let Nigerians aware of the danger and rally people over 170-something thousand polling units? That's the big challenge. You see, an election becomes too big to rig when people come out. This got between 43 to 45% turnout. That's why it was too big to rig. If the margin was about 10,000 or even 5,000, it's not what we are saying we'll be saying, no. But the people understand the risk, so they mounted the polling units. We all know now. They mounted the collation center. We all know in the case of another by-election, once they took the collation center for them, they pushed them out. That was the end of the election. Didn't you see people with fraudulent election sheets trying to come into the collation center? That the people started shouting, ole, 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 ole. So between that 8 o'clock and 12 midnight to 1, that's the time they win the election. Federal might was played heavily then. Osun people can sing Oju to wo, but they still collected the money. Those are the problems in our election process. They can sing Oju to wo, but a lot of them still collected the money. It's not that they rejected the money now. There lies the problem. Because you see, voters will only tilt to a candidate with the possibility of winning because they don't want to waste their votes. So as the fact that they are still collecting the money, that's where lies the problem.
Once again, if you want political analysis that goes beyond the headlines, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell because this conversation is only getting started and trust me, you don't want to be left out. And this is where the Osun story becomes much bigger than Osun, because if Rufai is right that the election became difficult to manipulate because voters were present, watching and protecting their votes, then there's a reason here that has nothing to do with political parties. It means voters' participation matters. You can have the strongest party structure in the country, but if voters are organized, engaged and determined to protect their votes, the calculation can change. But there's another problem for the opposition. Can they actually work together? Because winning one state is one thing, building a national coalition capable of challenging a sitting president is something completely different. And that is exactly where the next part of this conversation comes in.
As we head towards the elections, it's something that you will continue to see politicians building alliances here and there. And then, of course, Omoyele Sowore, you see the Adewale Adebayo, and then, of course, the factional presidential candidate, as they have said, of the Accord Party. Coming together, these are the sort of alliances that we need. But even if they do agree to step down for one person, can that one person be able to withstand a very strong candidate like President Tinubu of the APC? I think they need to do more. And that's why you would have seen the likes of Salihu Lukman calling for this G100 summit. But of course, there are fears also that G100 summit is being called to actually back Atiku Abubakar and not to create, an even ground for all the, for a genuine presidential candidate to emerge. And so those are the fears. As we head into into 2027 election unless the opposition, commits to presenting a major formidable candidate. If not, the results of 2023 elections may be before us. So Nigerians will be expecting very sound alternatives from the opposition too, not just telling us that they want to defeat President Tinubu, they want to present a single candidate against the APC. What can they do better? Right. And then, of course, for the APC, they need to put their house in order, and I can see that President Tinubu is trying to do that. Despite this defeat in Osun State, I can tell you that President Tinubu will look like someone who will be able to make capital out of what has happened in Osun State rather than the losses. But like I told you earlier on, the consensus is that the APC remains very strong ahead of 2027, yes, except the opposition is able to present a single candidate. But like Rufai had asked earlier, who will step down for who? Well, it's left for us to watch. As the campaigns begin on Wednesday, August 19, Nigerians should look out for what can be done to change their situation. How can they get more jobs created for youth?
Indeed.
How can our hospitals, be improved? How can women participate more in politics? Let's not allow the politicians to drive the narrative.
Absolutely. All right.
Because politics is too important to be left to politicians alone.
So now we have two very different realities. On one side, Osun has shown that APC can be defeated. On the other side, APC remains a powerful national political structure and Tinubu is still capable of winning in 2027. And then there's the opposition. Obi has his supporters, Atiku has his political structure. Other opposition figures are talking about alliances. There are discussions around coalition and possible realignment, but talking about a coalition is easy. Be the one that Nigerians will actually believe is in the difficult part. Because these politicians don't just want to agree on removing Tinubu, they eventually have to agree on who leads, what the coalition stands for, and what happens after they win. And that is where many political alliances become complicated. So I don't think Osun tells us that Tinubu has already lost in 2027. It doesn't. And I also don't think it tells us that the opposition has no chance. It doesn't. What Osun has done is give both sides something to think about. For APC, it is a reminder that political power cannot be taken for granted. For the opposition, it is a reminder that APC can actually be beaten, but only if they can turn individual victories into a national strategy. And for voters, perhaps the biggest lesson is even simpler. Your vote matters most when you show up and protect it. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the opposition can genuinely build a coalition strong enough to defeat Tinubu in 2027? Or is APC still too strong? Let me know what you think in the comments.